welcome to the From Nature to Nurture podcast. I am your host, Danielle, and I am here today with our 14th episode. Today, I am recording from my brand new office. It is the same room. It has just been reconfigured to fit my current work and now kind of new business trajectory. If you are new to my work or haven't been here since before my podcast, I used to have a full product line and a physical shop. And so my office used to be more of a workshop. You could barely see any of the walls. It was filled with tons of shelving and tables so I could make all sorts of herbal goodies, and I needed a lot more storage. And now that I am fully focused on teaching and writing, I can turn my office into more of a study, which has been really nice. So I got a new cozy rug. I moved our rocking chair in here. I only have one shelving for jars and tinctures and all sorts of stuff like that. I have two big bookcases that are just filled with so many books and a few herbal jars, but it's a lot of books. I need to actually count. I'd be interested to see how many herbal books I actually have. It's a lot. But yeah, so it's a much more cozy space, which is perfect for this season. I was trying to wait until I sold a lot of the items in here so that I wouldn't have to just move things around, but I decided to move all of my extra furniture and materials down into the garage until I can get some things processed, because I was really craving having this workspace that really reflects where I am and what I'm doing. And that fits perfectly into what we're talking about today, which is root medicine. So we'll be talking about the physical medicine of roots, but also the energetic and metaphysical side of roots. So as I've been kind of going through this last month of a lot of contemplating, shifting things around, rebuilding my office, planning classes into next year, I've been really called to work with roots a lot more, which makes a lot of sense since that's where we are kind of with the season. As we talked about in last episode, roots right now is where a lot of the medicine is held in the plants. So in the spring and summer, all of the vital energy from the plant is going up into the fruiting body, the above ground parts, those flowers, those leaves, the fruits. And then in the fall and winter is when all of the energy moves into the roots, where the roots are deepening and expanding. And this is the time when you would go harvest the roots, because that's where all of that vital energy is. And of course, we want to harvest the plants when they are in their prime energetic state, right? That's why this is not really a time for us to harvest leaves, even if most of them are gone by now. But the energy of the plant just isn't focused there. And so as we're working with roots, we are getting more of those nutrients, stronger medicine, and more of that stabilizing, grounding energy, of course. It's hard to talk about roots without moving so much into the energetic, because there's some beautiful symbolism there, as I talked about in the last episode, where this is that time where if we mirror our lives with the nature around us, then we are also rooting down, grounding down. We are focusing more on ourselves internally, where we want to be, doing a lot of reflection and reassessment, which is exactly what the plants are doing. And so it's just beautiful, beautiful symbolism that is really ingrained deeply into my life. And I have been finding myself in this very root kind of energy. I accidentally took a week off of social media, which is amazing. Um, wasn't my plan, since I'm actually teaching a class next week and I haven't marketed at all. But that's where I'm finding myself, is in more of this cozy grounding energy, working on little house projects that make my space feel more rooted and feel like more me, doing a lot of baking. I think I've baked like 4 different apple crisps at this point, and we're only, I guess, at the end of November, but still. Um, and doing a lot of reflection, a lot of thinking about how this past year went. This was the first year that, like I said, like I let go of my product line. So it was my first year fully into teaching. And I started a little late into the spring, since I took that winter time to like fully decompress from having an apothecary and took a lot of reassessment time. So this has kind of been my first year working differently. So this winter time is all about thinking back on how my classes have gone, how my offerings have gone, how I felt with all of them, because that was the main reason that I switched, was that I was feeling a lot more called to teaching and kind of moving away from the product line life. And really looking into this next year of what do I want to bring to the table? What do I want to share with you all, from podcasts to classes to workshops, collaborations, hopefully finishing my book. All of these different things I have just been ruminating on and letting to marinate. And I have found myself pulled so much more into this root work where I'm spending a lot more time at home. I am rooting down into my home base, and I'm not really paying attention to much to the outside world, which has been really nice, but then kind of strange whenever I do go leave the house and do something. It's very shocking. But 6 minutes of rambles later, we're getting to it. We're talking about root medicine today. So, since we are already here, let's talk a bit more about the emotional and spiritual side of working with roots. So, roots have a few different themes that we can explore. One of my favorites is that working with roots helps you to be more in your body and to return to yourself. So, what this means to me is that roots remind us that we are not alone. We are all interconnected, and sometimes we do feel alone, but just like roots going into the earth, they spread out, they entangle with other roots from other plants, and we also have the beautiful symbolism of how we bury our dead, and so we are kind of always surrounded by others, which can be a little morbid if that's not your thing, but it helps to remind you that yes, you are an individual, but yes, you are also a part of a greater community, whether you realize it or not. So, returning to yourself is also returning to that beautiful, wider community that we have, whether that is the mushrooms outside, the deer in your backyard, the person taking a jog past your house. They're all part of your wider community. You just have to reach out and build that connection. The next theme that we have is the beauty and the slowness. So, roots grow very slowly. Some take 10 to 50 years to fully mature, some are very quick, but there's a beautiful message in that where we're all running on our own time, but there's also this slow building energy instead of trying to shoot forward and skip steps, right? It's kind of the antithesis of hustle culture, where we are being slow, methodical. We are really rooting down and making our grounded decisions instead of just fluttering around from idea to idea to idea. And the slowness is perfect for this time of year because after we're coming out of the height of summer and it's so exciting and fun and there's all these activities to do, we need a lot more slowness. We need to slow down and check in with our nervous system, check in with our digestion. There's so many different aspects of slowness that you can dig into, but just having a slower mentality can really bring you a lot of peace, where you're not rushing through decisions, you are fully embodied, you are feeling your best because you're actually making plans and moving methodically to take care of yourself and make sure that you're not burning yourself out. And so roots can help to remind us of that slowness. And then we also have the theme of winter as a rebuilding season. So, kind of how I talked about in last episode, where winter is all about that reassessment time where you are looking at your daily habits, looking at your goals, and reassessing how this year went. Did you meet any of the goals that you wanted to? Did your goals change? Did you find that how you were going about something didn't work or that it worked amazing? And so, kind of combining that slowness and that returning to yourself culminates into this beautiful rebuilding season where we are really taking stock. And sometimes that can be hard, but the wintertime is perfect for that because outside of like the holiday craziness, there's a lot less going on. People tend to stay home more. You don't want to go out into the cold. There's less like city run events and things like that. And so this is that beautiful time to work on yourself. So, moving into the medicine, the physical medicine of the season. So, we're going to talk about a few different roots here. I'm going to start by talking about burdock. Burdock is one of my favorites because it is a nice mild bitter, but it has also these other beautiful benefits and works really well for me. So the taste of burdock is obviously bitter, but it is mildly sweet, a little nutty, and slightly pungent. The energetics of it is that it is oily, which can mean a different thing. So it is a little drying with water as a diuretic, but is also moistening by helping us to absorb more fats and oils. So it's a wonderful balanced, balanced plant. It is slightly cooling and slightly astringent and tonifying. So when we get into the herbal actions of burdock, we obviously have the digestion support because bitters help to activate our digestion. It is also an alterative. Now, an alterative is a bit hard to describe, but it's basically a plant that helps your body do what it's trying to do anyways, but with more ease and more efficiency. So lending a bit of energy to whatever our body is already working on. Alternatives are wonderful for any time of year, but especially I love them in the winter because our bodies are trying to adjust to this whole new temperature, and the air is a lot drier, it's colder, it's darker, and so our body is already under a lot of extra stress. And so working with an alternative can help to support your body and to create a little bit more balance overall. A burdock is also a wonderful prebiotic, which is super important because we talk about probiotics all the time in our modern culture, but we don't talk about prebiotics a lot. And prebiotics are super important. So, probiotics are the living organism that is in our gut, but the prebiotics are the food for our gut bacteria. So, if there's no food for them, then they have nothing to survive on, right? So if we're looking at our digestion as a garden, the prebiotics is like a fertilizer and the probiotics are like the seeds. So you need both and they both need each other. And how cool is it that we can work with burdock as a prebiotic? Because of this prebiotic quality, it's also wonderful to help rebalance our gut microbiome after antibiotics and to help regulate everything in our gut. And then burdock is also a diuretic, which helps to cleanse, regulate, and stimulate our fluids through our system. And burdock can also be wonderful for helping to balance blood sugar because it's high in inulin. So that's not all of the herbal energetics, but that's just a basic rundown of burdock. What I think is really cool about it is that it's used a lot in food in Asia. So you can actually find burdock sometimes in Asian markets under the name gobo, Gobo, and you can cook with it. You can make a decoction of it. I love to do decoctions personally. I'll make a rooty kind of blend with burdock and ginger, cinnamon, clove. Sometimes I'll add dandelion in there as well, star anise, just a very warming, rooty blend as a digestive drink and to help warm me up on these cold winter days. All right, so now I'm going to talk about a root that is a little controversial, isn't the right word. People are very opinionated. So we're going to talk about licorice. Now, before I go on a long rant, I'm going to give you this one sentence and then we're going to leave it at that. Licorice flavored products are not flavored after the licorice root plant. They are flavored after fennel or star anise. So before you say, oh, I hate licorice, try actual licorice root. It is different. It is much more mild and not nearly as like spicy. It's completely different. So we're gonna leave it at that. So Why I love licorice is because most medicinal plants are drying, and as a dry person, that can be really difficult. Tea blending or formula blending in tinctures is really important to me because I'm a very dry person, and so I need to make sure I'm not overly drying myself and further exasperating the problem. But licorice is a moistening plant, and because of this moistening ability, it's also a neutral temp and neutral tone plant. That makes it what is called in Chinese medicine a great harmonizer because it helps to bring more balance to formulas. And that's why I love licorice. It is also slightly bitter, and we said it's sweet, but yeah, it's very, very balanced, which is really nice. So, in terms of herbal actions, it is a wonderful antiseptic, antiviral, antimicrobial, and antioxidant. And I'd say the number one way that I work with it is actually for um, my immune system and for inflammation. Now, I like to use the term inflammation modulation instead of anti-inflammatory because we actually need some inflammation in our bodies. It's good, it's working. Our inflammation is our immune system kicking in and saying something's going on, and just the nature of our world is that there's kind of always something going on between what's in our water and our air and our food and whatnot. So some inflammation is okay, but what's really interesting about licorice is that it is such a strong inflammation modulator that it could actually be called anti-inflammatory because it really does get rid of inflammation really, really well. And it's also a wonderful immune tonic and immune modulation plant, which is, like I said, where I kind of work with it the most. Um, Being an immune tonic means it helps to nourish and strengthen the immune system. So we don't always want to be just activating our immune system and stoking our immune system. We need to care for it and nourish it because otherwise we're going to get completely run down. So licorice is a wonderful plant for that. It is also a nervine tropho-restorative, which means it's also helping to lend nourishment and strength to our nervous system. So it has this beautiful, like I said earlier, balancing quality, lending a lot of nourishment and vitality and just beautiful support to our immune system and our nervous system, which is what we commonly need, especially in the winter time. I will say I'm not talking about contraindications too in depth in this podcast, but do your research specifically with contraindications for licorice. There are a lot of medication contraindications there, so double check that first. How I like to work with licorice is in tinctures actually a lot of the time. I do work with it in teas, like I said, to kind of help balance those energetics. But currently, right now, I am taking a reishi, turkey tail, and licorice tincture to help with my immune system because those are all wonderful immune balancing, immune tonic plants to help just support and strengthen my immune system without activating it. Next, we're going to talk about ashwagandha. So, ashwagandha is very popular. You've probably heard of it. It is a common plant to work with for stress and anxiety and sleep. But before we get into that, I'm going to talk about the herbal energetics first. So, it is bitter, pungent, and sweet, and warming and drying. Um, what I find interesting about ashwagandha is there's a lot of, it's kind of like licorice where some people hate it, some people love it in terms of taste. I love ashwagandha. The name in Sanskrit actually translates to something like horse smell or horsehair or something like that. And that's because it kind of does smell like a stable. But I think it tastes great. To me, it tastes like a very mild chocolatey kind of taste, but everyone's a little different. Maybe I'm the weird one out. But ashwagandha has a huge affinity for the nervous system. So it is an adaptogen, which helps our bodies to adapt to stress. And it is also another nervine tropho-restorative. So, like I said, helping to lend more support and vitality to the nervous system. It is also a mild sedative because of those two qualities, which is wonderful. I like working with mild sedatives for during the day use as well as night. It's kind of like the dose that changes the intensity, right? So like ashwagandha has gotten me through a lot of retail jobs when, especially like in the height of holiday season, it is madness. And ashwagandha kind of helps because of that adaptogen quality, helps you to have some more energy reserves in terms of your nervous system. So when you're being yelled at by customers or really stressed because you're doing all these floor remodels and restocking things, ashwagandha lends you a bit more vitality so that you can handle it without having a breakdown. It's my number one plant for retail workers or people in the service industry. It is also another good inflammation modulator and an immunomodulator as well. And if that wasn't enough, ashwagandha can also help with regulating and supporting healthy thyroid conditions. Now, when you're working with ashwagandha, it is traditionally worked with simmered in a fat or milk. So cow milk is said to be the best in Ayurveda because it is a rejuvenator as well. So they kind of complement each other that way. Or simmer it in ghee, which is a clarified butter. You can also use a tincture or a powder of it and like use it in like powdered hot chocolate blends or energy balls or different things like that. But my favorite way is simmered in milk, and I'll either just simmer it by itself and add a little honey, or I will make a golden milk turmeric latte kind of thing and add an ashwagandha to that. Ashwagandha is my go-to when I have been so stressed that I can't sleep because my head is just going and I can't fully calm down to get into that sleep state. So that's when I make that golden milk and I love it. It always does the trick. Now, the last plant that we're going to talk about is ginger, of course, because it's a beautiful warming plant and that's what we need when it's so cold outside. I am someone who runs really hot, so I don't work with warming, like strong warming plants like ginger as often, but there's also some different intensity variation in ginger depending on if it's fresh or dried. So fresh ginger is warming, dried ginger is hot. It is much more concentrated when it is dried, so it's a lot stronger. So if I'm formulating with ginger, I add a tiny, tiny bit because things that are really pungent and spicy like that are also called drivers in terms of herbal formulating. So they help to drive your herbs deeper into your system. So when you pair it with something that is directed towards a specific body system, like if you want to work on your reproductive system, you pair it with reproductive herbs, it helps to drive, ginger will help to drive that herb deeper into that specific area. Ginger is also just wonderfully warming, which is great for any sort of circulation issues. It is a stimulating diaphoretic, which means when you are in a fever, it helps to circulate the blood to the surface of your skin and relieving that internal heat. So it's going to be wonderful for fevers. It's also a stimulating emmenagogue, which means it helps to warm, relax, and stimulate a cold uterus to help bring on your blood. Like I said, it's a circulatory stimulant, and it's very stimulating for everything. It's also a stimulating expectorant. Expectorants help to push up and out any kind of stuck mucus. So when you have those cold, dry, hard coughs, stimulating expectorants are going to help to bring that circulation to the lungs, thin any of that stuck mucus, and help push it out by getting those good, productive coughs out. Ginger is also wonderful for your digestion because of that warming. Sometimes you need to restoke those digestive fires to get them going again. And it also helps to stimulate saliva, which is a very important process in the digestive system. And there's just so much. I'm not going to talk about everything, but those are kind of like my favorites of the main reasons that I work with ginger. I normally work with ginger as a driver or to help balance out a lot of medicinal herbs are also cold, and so trying to help balance out those energetics. Ginger can be tinctured or used in teas. Um, I will normally use it dried and in teas in very small percentages, but a fresh ginger decoction is one of my go-tos when I am actively sick as well, to kind of help strengthen my immune system a little bit and get everything warm and moving through my body, especially if there's a fever. Like I said, to like pull that heat to the skin and away from those internal organs. And fresh ginger is just wonderful in food as well, which is, I love food as medicine. It's one of my favorite ways to work with plants. And so by adding ginger to your food, you're also getting a lot of these benefits by also just getting the flavor and the spice in your food. So let's talk about specific ways to incorporate herbs. There's 4 main ways to incorporate them into your daily routine. So the first one is decoctions. A decoction is a long and low simmered tea. So you would do like a few tablespoons of roots to a few cups of water and simmer them on low for 30 minutes. You need that long, slow infusion to really break down the hard material of the roots. Then we have herbal broths, which is very similar. You're just working with them in a little bit more of a food capacity. So great additions would be like burdock, ginger, astragalus, garlic and onion scraps, different things like that, where whether you're making a bone broth or just like a veggie stock, you can just sip on those as a drink or use them in soups in your different dishes. And that's why you're kind of working with the roots as the food is medicine concept. We also have syrups. So syrups can be a wonderful addition to your teas, coffees, mocktails, hot chocolates, anything like that. So you would start by making a really strong decoction. Then you would mix in equal parts of honey or sugar, depending on what flavor you want to go for there. And yeah, then you get to experiment. Herbal syrups are really fun in mocktails, is how I tend to use them. So I'll do like, if you took my mocktail class last year, I would make a syrup and I would mix it with like a ginger beer or a tonic or something, and then like a splash of some sort of juice or even a tea, like an iced tea, to make a wonderful herbal mocktail. And then we also have root powders. So you can buy them already powdered, which is more expensive, or you can powder them yourself, which you tend to not get them as fine. So there is a pros cons there. But root powders can just be easily mixed into drinks or used in your baking or your cooking. I love powders by making my own seasoning blends. So I will do some like different roots and herbs and spices to kind of put over eggs or season chicken or even just add to like pasta sauces and stuff. That way they're also preserved, so I'm not having to worry about them going bad as a syrup or something like that. But yeah, you can use them in baking. You can add powders to brownies, cakes, make those little energy balls, different things like that, where it's another food as medicine concept. But I love taking the like strict medicinal view out of herbs and working with them more as that food, as that nourishment, because you're still getting the benefits. But it's kind of changing that mindset where you're not swapping a pharmaceutical for an herb. Now you are incorporating an herb into your lifestyle. It's a whole topic, but it's a very distinct shift in your brain where you start seeing the plants as beings instead of just an alternative to modern medicine, which is really important. So, in closing, I want to give you guys some actionable ideas of different ways that you can start working with this root medicine. Um, so here we go. You can start by doing a nightly decoction. Like I said, one of my favorite ways to work with roots is making a decoction. So I'll give you a quick little recipe. I'm not going to give you exact amounts because that is up to you, because teas are very much about taste as well. But I would do burdock, dandelion, cinnamon, a tiny bit of ginger, and some clove. And I would simmer that on the stove until it's about half the amount of water that you put in. And then I would mix in some sort of sweetener. I think maple syrup would be really good with those kind of like rooty, rich tastes. And then add in a splash of creamer or milk. You can also do a moon milk before bed, kind of like we're talking about with the golden milks, or moon milks are similar where it's simmered milks with plants that are relaxing. So do like ashwagandha and chamomile, maybe a little bit of cinnamon. Oh, that would be really good. I think I'm going to do that tonight. And then you can also, if you want to kind of get away from physically ingesting them, you can also meditate with roots. So like we were talking about at the top of the podcast, we're talking about a little bit more about the energetics behind the roots. You can just sit with them and contemplate them, ponder them, and sit in meditation with them and see what messages come through. Like where do you need to root more? Where do you need more energy to be moved to in your life, and to kind of help you slow down and pay attention to these deeper shifts that are happening deep into the winter time. So I hope you enjoyed learning about roots today. I would love to hear if you have a favorite root or a winter ritual that you feel like is really deeply nourishing and grounding and steadying. And I hope you enjoy adding the magic of roots into your life. If you would like to find out more about my upcoming classes and offerings, you can find me at rootandwandercollective.com. I'll see you along the plant path.